Is it me?
I don't know. Let's see. I'll find out.
You were kind of blurry.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay, we are streaming live on Facebook. This is a Local 100 Fightback Coalition Facebook live stream event. I just need to do something about my video for a minute. Hold on a second, guys. Okay, that's much better. All right, so in any case, we're coming to you live on an important day that, although our union leadership couldn't give a shit and has nothing but contempt for the life of Breonna Taylor. I did a Facebook, a Google search on their website to try to find one mention of Breonna Taylor, a Black essential worker murdered by police because they had such contempt for her life and denied her any respect as a human being. There's no mention on the union website of Breonna Taylor. If you don't believe me, hold on, I'll share my screen so we can show you, because it's important to give this context with the, to share the context of this with our members, because it matters in some of the other things that we're going to talk about later in this live stream. So here's the union website, and here's the screen search for Breonna Taylor. Your search yielded 0 results, no results. Well, go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay. I would have been shocked if there was something there. They actually absolutely know. They don't see the connection. They have absolutely no race or class consciousness or see how this affects their members being of the same being of a demographic that are affected by police violence.
Yeah.
These are their children. The vast majority of the people we work with, the people of color, and it's their children that are being affected. They live in the Bronx, they live in Manhattan, they live in Staten Island, just like Eric Garner.
Yeah.
Queens. They don't.
And also, I think we need to say that it hasn't always been this way, right? It hasn't always been this way with Local 100.
That's right.
Whatever differences I've ever had with Roger Toussaint as a union leader, Roger Toussaint led a march over the Brooklyn Bridge for justice for Amadou Diallo in 1999, when he wasn't even the president of the union. He was a member of a competing opposition group. So whatever disagreements I have with Roger, I will never not give him credit for understanding what side to be on in that struggle. Jonathan, go ahead.
And that his e-board also voted to officially support the family of Sean Bell. Yeah. And Roger Toussaint got a lot of shit from the detectives union about that.
Yeah. Well, Tony would have folded immediately if he got a hint of that. But also, I think, to give a balanced picture, it was also because there were revolutionary socialists on the executive board like Marty Goodman, who raised a lot of these motions in the first place. They were connected to the movements. They were connected to the movements. They were in the streets because they saw it as their fight. So there's a wider picture. It's not just one person knowing what time it is. It's that Roger would have been thrown from the train if he even thought about not backing these struggles. So and same thing with Mike Quill. Mike Quill's no fucking saint that walked on water either. He was scared straight by a membership that had class solidarity and knew what time it was and knew their own power and wanted to use it. So I want to show a video about Breonna Taylor from Louisville, and it's a rally memorializing the 1-year anniversary of her death at the hands of racist police. And it's, I'll warn you in advance, it's pretty emotionally affecting, but it's important that we never not say her name. We never, ever forget her memory, and that we never, ever give up the fight for justice. So let me share my screen and I'll share that video with you. Okay, so, this is a pain. Trying to find it, sorry. This is it? Yeah, this is it. Okay, I'm gonna.
I want you to pay attention to what is happening in this country.
let me just talk to the moms for a second. You know how you tell your baby, call me when you make it home. I always think about what would it be for your daughter to be a healthcare worker, and you're Tamika Palmer, and you're worried about her just washing her hands, making sure she doesn't get COVID. At a time when this country was celebrating healthcare workers, they were telling us we must honor healthcare workers. Brianna worked all day and came home and her man took her out for dinner. She made it home safe. I'm just saying, as a mother, all I ever want to know is that my babies made it home safe. And then the people that I pay, that you pay to serve and protect, not to hold it down. And they killed her. She was home. She made it. But check this out. Don't stop with LMPD. Let's talk about these damn recusals. First of all, that 911 call, when Kenny went to jail, they knew about that. While we were trying to figure it out, and we were thinking about Ahmaud Arbery, and trying to figure out what happened with Ahmaud. LMPD knew that Kenny was on the phone saying, somebody help me. They killed my girlfriend. I need help. But they locked him up. And they told us, there's nothing to see here. And then, George Floyd. Here we were trying to be safe, trying to figure out what happened with Ahmaud, trying to figure out what was going on with Kenny. Who was Brianna? Who was Brianna? And then we watched George die slowly. And we still did not erupt. It was when we heard Kenny on that 911 call. That's when we said, oh hell no, enough is enough. I am a black woman with a lot of privilege. I made a decent living. I got central air. But I couldn't keep myself out of the street that night. Because sometimes you gotta raise your voice. You gotta raise your fist. You gotta be willing to sacrifice something. Say her name!
All right, let me just stop the screen share. Okay, I just want to kind of blow the floor open for people to speak about, their memories of this movement and how we honor Breonna Taylor's legacy, and how we honor this union, how we honor the working class by being there, how we try to take the mud off of the name of our union. Why are we in this struggle? Why are we social justice unionists? Why does it matter? This is why it matters. Who wants to speak? Anthony will speak? Sorry. It's hard to follow, right. I know.
But all last summer, we went to protests throughout the city for Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and for everyone else, victims of police violence. And this is it's all part of a greater struggle in this country, and it's all part of the history of this country and the history of policing, and what we need to do to move forward in this country to change the legacy, to change it, to really bring justice for everyone in this country. right now, no one's been punished for Breonna Taylor's killing. No one's been punished, and it's a tragedy. I mean, as a result of people protesting, there have been laws that have been changed. You know, and we're moving towards where you will no longer have qualified immunity for police officers, you know, nationwide. So it's important that you know, our union and, you know, people who are interested in justice and creating a fair country, you know, participate in these protests and, you know, lend their voice to it. And our union, you know, should be at the forefront of it. We were at one point, but we're not at the currently.
Yeah, I just piggybacking on that. I think it also, we have to be blunt and brutally honest that the reason why the movement for Black Lives Matter has not had, well, one of the big reasons why they have not had the kind of success in terms of real and lasting reforms that they were demanding is because they have been fucking abandoned by the labor movement in this country. They haven't lifted a goddamn finger, not one of them. I mean, there's very few. I mean, the airline workers union, there's a handful of them. The longshore workers on the West Coast, there are little pockets throughout the country. There was a few in like Milwaukee and other parts of the Midwest that you see playing an active role. But for the most part, the union leadership has been AWOL, just like they were AWOL when we were dying. Remember? Other speakers, go ahead. Umberto, you want to speak, or you got on mute?
Well,
Oh no, yeah, I mean, yeah, as we honor the life of Breonna Taylor, it's been, like I said, it's been a tumultuous year, and like Anthony was saying, we did get some legislation. We also have law. I mean, the courts fighting the no-knock warrants. I guess, I mean, the problem is that each state has to pass these laws individually. So we've been trying to get these illegal and racist no-knock warrants, which plagued Black and brown people, and this is before Breonna Taylor. You think about the war on drugs and the battering rams and the armed police that invaded homes in Los Angeles, New York, et cetera, et cetera. So this is an ongoing fight. This is not new, sadly, that we have to say this every year or every. It's not like something that's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen again, but something that we've been fighting. We've been fighting for the longest, and yeah, it seems like the union has dropped the ball in terms of focusing on class struggles and struggles of Black and brown people for a workforce that's majority Black and brown. On this anniversary, sadly, we just heard that Kenneth Walker was cleared of his attempted murder charge for defending himself and his girlfriend, who were blatantly attacked by the police, you know, and they just dropped the charges 4 days ago, finally. We all know that he was innocent. The cops lied, and all they got was, you know, they got fired. They're probably going to get a job elsewhere. That's what happens. But, you know, as the years pass, we have to just, like you said, pay homage to Breonna Taylor, who was, you know, who was a person. And that's another thing. Like, whenever these things happen, media, they tend to try to paint a picture of the victim, you know, or say falsehoods, spread falsehoods, or blame her because her ex-boyfriend was on a so-called warrant. Like, a lot of these things that come out, that just try to tarnish the victim. It's like, it doesn't matter, you know, what you do, whether you're a blue-collar worker, whether you're a professional. It doesn't matter what you do. Even if you're a lawyer, you're still gonna get killed if you're Black or brown in this country. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do for a living or if you work or not. It doesn't matter. You know, everybody's entitled to due process, and that's the problem. We're not getting due process. The police are the judge, jury, and executioner in these cases. And like you said, it's important that we get behind these struggles. And I always tell my union brothers and sisters that these struggles, you know, the struggles for wages and the struggles that we fight for every day on the job are important. But if we're not fighting for our brothers and sisters outside of the job, then what's the point? You know, it's important that we put our energy towards helping everybody. Like, you know, we all win at the end. You know, we all win if we get this justice.
Right. Well, the other thing, though, too, is that in the history of this country, there's never been a time where Black and brown people of color have fought for and won democratic rights, civil rights, voting rights, anything like that. Anytime they've won reforms, those benefits were passed on to other people of color, to other oppressed people, to working class people, to poor people, not just in this country, but all over the world. So, like we have to have a framework that this is not a separate issue at all. And anybody who says that it is completely clueless and a cancer upon our union, because they have no idea what side of the barricades to be on. What do you call somebody that doesn't know what side to be on the barricades on a picket line to be? You call them a scab. All right, and we use whatever force is necessary to defend ourselves from scabs. We also limit their control and their political influence within the union at all costs. Tom, you want to talk for a little bit about this?
Yeah, I was thinking that I might have the number wrong, but I saw a figure that since the election, there have been 249 new pieces of legislation introduced across in all 50 states, trying to restrict voter suppression, to limit the number of, make it more difficult for Black and brown people, primarily Black voters, to vote. Huge step of repression and trying to roll back the clock. On top of that, since the protests have died down, we're starting to see more and more new cases of Black men, women, children being shot unarmed. And we also, the other thing that is has to be pointed out is the fact that those same demographics are the ones that get the worst outcomes with healthcare in America. They were the most vulnerable for COVID, so they've been hit with a stepping up. Instead of saying, hey, maybe, they're ramping up their violence because they're mad about people protesting police violence. You've got new increased efforts to engage in voter suppression, and a problem that has been part and parcel of the healthcare problem in America, that it's definitely racialized that way, and nobody's doing anything to address that. And it's a multi-pronged, multi-front war being waged, and I just don't see how anybody that prides themselves being a good unionist doesn't understand that these struggles are all completely intertwined. They're not separated, they're not compartmentalized, and we can't just contain our class power by worrying about battles for wages and paid sick days and that sort of stuff, that all of these things affect us. And the privilege of saying, well, it doesn't affect me. I mean, when I have my coworkers may be killed on their way home from work, or their children, or their parents, or whatever. It's just, I don't know how you could stand on the sidelines and feel that this isn't a fight that you belong in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, the other thing though too is that if you like the weekend, if you like all the benefits and your relative privilege, go thank a Black family.
Right.
Go thank an immigrant family. Show some respect for the people who did the fighting, who actually won those victories. If you can't, and if you got nothing to offer to this struggle, then you sit on the sidelines and we'll do the fighting. Get out of our way.
It's no exaggeration. Those things were paid for in blood. That's not a hyperbole. That's for real. That they were paid for with blood.
Absolutely. And when I say that, I'm not just talking to the Archie Bunkers amongst us. I'm talking to Tony Utano. I'm talking to the white, privileged, racially clueless morons who populate the executive board, like John Chiarello. They act like Yankee Stadium bleacher creatures at the executive board meeting when anything remotely political or socially conscious comes up. Whoever's volume is causing that, please mute. Okay, so we're going to watch how our union leadership thinks the class struggles should be led, and how they want to show that they get it, that they understand what's going on in the world. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to see our union president, Tony Utano. And then I just want you to think about like who Tony's talking to here, because it's important. that he's talking to them and not, I'm trying to close this, sorry. How do I close this? Let's go back. Damn it. Having some technical difficulties here, guys. Sorry about that. Close. There we go. All right, let me just try to get this going for you. I got to go back and damn it. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We'll be with you in a moment. Shit. All right. Damn it. There we go. I got it now. All right, so let me share my screen again. Where is it? Share screen. There we go. Okay, we're making progress here. Let's see. I believe this is it. What happened there? Oh, my screen share went out. Hold on, let me try it again. The reason why I'm doing this is because it's important. I wouldn't be going through the effort if it wasn't. Sorry. YouTube. Here it is. Okay, so this is your union president. And think about who he's talking to here. Who is in this picture?
Tony, I was going to ask you to weigh in on these property crime issues as well.
So graffiti brings me back to the 70s and 80s. And there's a movie, if you ever want to watch it to see what the trains look like, it's called The Warriors. They were horrible. They had graffiti, they had gangs in the system. You know, it was a terrible time where your mother used to tell, I remember my mother used to say, make sure you ride the car with the conductor. But back then there were police that were patrolling the trains in uniform, and they would walk up and down the trains. I remember seeing them. I remember them being there. That's what we need to bring back. You know, like my children, if they tell me, Dad, I'm going to take the train into the city, you know, sometimes I say to them, you know what? Here's money. Take an Uber or take a cab, because I'm not, you know, it's not a comfortable place, and it should be a comfortable place, right? That's what it's there for. It's there to transport people and be safe. We need it to be safe. We really need the city. We need people to step up and say, yes, we got to make this place. First of all.
All right, that's about enough of Tony. I can only take Tony in small increments, even at the executive board. It's hard not to be ashamed. You know, by the way, let me leave the disclaimer. I'm not speaking as a local 100 executive board member. I'm speaking as a rank and file member who is absolutely disgusted with our leadership. Think about who is in the picture frame in that video. The whole event is sponsored by the Manhattan Institute. You know who the Manhattan Institute is? Have you all heard of Nicole Jelinek from the New York Post? A vile, racist piece of garbage who does nothing but attack transit workers racially with epithets, calling us thugs, gangsters. We're bullies. We're trying to extort the city. We're workers' compensation frauds. We're you know, overtime cheats. This is who is running this event. And you know what else the Manhattan Institute is up to? They're anti-union. They're union busters, okay? They call for privatizing public employee pensions. They call for busting labor unions. They are outright racists. They are supporters of Rudolph Giuliani. And to couch it more accurately, Rudolph Giuliani in a campaign speech said that he could be charged with plagiarism because he basically took their entire program and used it as his campaign literature, as his policies. And your absolute complete schmuck, moron of a union leader thinks that the way to fight to make our workplace safe is to be seen live with our boss, Sarah Feinberg, who has blood on her hands, with 150 of our members dead. She has our blood on her hands because she did not provide any kind of safe conditions for us down here. And she guaranteed that we were nothing but a COVID experiment during this pandemic. And you want to give her a public relations photo op and talk so that she can wring her hands about how we just don't understand why the subways are so violent. We don't understand why the system's so unsafe. Oh, what can we do? This is not a transit problem. It's the city's got to help us. And by the way, you guys can watch the video for yourself. Your moron union leader does not mention Andrew Cuomo not once. That must be another one of those miracles, huh? It must be, you know, it must be like one of those natural phenomenons that it just didn't come to his mind in the moment that he should mention our scumbag racist boss at all when it comes to the safety of New York City transit workers. And then he trots out there the standard racial cluelessness of white, you know, relatively privileged working class people who see themselves as middle class, who see themselves as equals of the bosses and want to be treated as respectable partners for the bosses. And he wants to go back to the halcyon days of the 1950s. Let me ask you something. Any black co-worker down here want to go back to the 1950s? Any immigrant worker want to go back to the 1950s? Any woman worker want to go back to the 1950s? Was it so fucking great? So in any case, that's just to lead off the discussion, but I'm going to let you guys, you know, have that, Mr. Utano. Umberto, you want to go first?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack. And like I said, I don't believe in ad hominem attacks on Utano, but I mean, that's why you hire a spokesperson or a PR person to write your stuff. You have to be prepared for these kind of talks. Listen, I'm not the best public speaker, not by any means, but if I was out there in the public eye, if I was at his position, I would either have somebody helping me or I would make sure my writing and my speech is on point. And he fumbles a lot. He makes a lot of errors. I mean, listen, if you feel your child will be unsafe on the subway, I could understand that. But why would you say that? You know, why would you tell that to the workers? It makes no sense. Like from a PR standpoint, I'm not talking about whatever you believe or not. But from a PR standpoint, why would you say that? Like we work down here, you know, like it's just a lot of fumbling. And then, yeah, why would you accept speaking under the umbrella of the Manhattan Institute? We know their background. We know what they're about, what they've been doing. He didn't even take Janina to, is that how you say her name? He didn't take Nicole to task. Like he said, why have you constantly attacked our membership? He didn't even take her to task. Granted, you know, whatever topic is topic, but you know, you gotta take her to task. Like he has no, like I said, I can't watch him sometimes. I can't bear to watch him. I said it's not an ad hominem attack. It's just he's never prepared. Anytime he speaks, when he spoke about Brother Sinclair who passed away, and he just completely destroyed that. And anytime he speaks, it's just he makes an embarrassment of us and himself. I mean, it's us too because he represents us. And I didn't vote for him, but he represents us. So it's like every time he speaks, it's an embarrassment. And like I said, I don't want to sit here and attack him but it's true. Like if we're paying Donahue all this money, who's also, I didn't want, like I said, yeah, but it's just like, come on, man, you're outdated. Like you have to get somebody that's in the know, that knows how to work this thing and make sure you pick the right words and the right speeches. Like that's PR 101. Any president, any head of any organization, that's number one. That's rule number one, you know? Yeah. So it's how you say and what you say. Yeah. So, and like I said, sometimes, you know, you might feel a certain way, but you don't put it out there to your members or to the public. That's just common sense. But anyway,
the other thing, Umberto, though, I mean, my honest opinion about this is that, like, it's not personal with me and Tony. I don't know.
No, I'm not saying you up. I'm saying, but like, people attack him. Yeah.
Do. No, I don't think you do. But it has nothing to do with him as a person, right?
No, I agree.
It has to do with the message that it sends to the working class and oppressed. And I think, to be quite honest with you, Tony's kind of like Trump. He doesn't realize how clueless he is. Like, he has no filter. He is the distillation of white, racially clueless privilege in America. I mean, here's a man who worked like 4 years, his entire career. He's been a union bureaucrat
decades,
for the better part of 40 years.
Yeah.
And he's been on the quote, right side of every election, running with just disgusting, rotten, traitorous union leadership after disgusting, rotten union leadership, and he's insulated in a bubble. He don't have to deal with our conditions. Like I said in the post we posted on Local 100 Fightback, must be nice. Must be nice to have a six-figure income that you can spend money anytime you want for your children, yourself, or anybody else, to not have to deal with the subways and ride Lyft or Uber or whatever. Must be nice. I bet many of our coworkers would like to have that lifestyle on our dues money, but they don't. Jonathan, I know you wanted to probably get in here, so I'm gonna. Or Anthony, go ahead, Anthony. You want to go first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back when we were negotiating the contract, I think I put up some posts either on our Facebook page or my page about the Manhattan Institute, and I think it was another think tank, conservative think tank. But and you mentioned that Giuliani used their literature basically as his campaign message and his policies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you look at what they put out concerning transit, what they put out as far as our raises are concerned are pretty much what we get. And it's pretty much what our union leadership says, hey, this is great. So if you want to know what they're thinking about giving us, you could just go to the Manhattan Institute's website about 4 or 5 months before our contract negotiations are about to begin, and look at their outline, and you'll see exactly what almost to the letter, almost to the number, what we're going to get as a contract, and that our union leadership is going to sell to us as being, outstanding and great. And then, he was on the phone call there, that Zoom call or whatever, with their chief propagandist in the New York Post, Nicole Galinas, who I cannot recall a single article where she advocated for transit workers being paid a wage that would allow them to live in the city that they serve. Where she ever advocated for us to have the proper healthcare benefits, that we deserve, given the type of job that we have, or even, well, those healthcare benefits, everyone deserves them, in my opinion. But she never ever advocates for us to have anything that we deserve. Everything that I hear all in my conversations with members that are the chief complaints about what's wrong with this job, Nicole Galinas is against us having those things. And when you mention, I don't know Tony Utano either, but I would hazard a guess that if I were to talk to, I would say 90% of the workers that are here, that work for transit, that in a conversation, you mentioned Sinclair, in a conversation where someone's asking you, about a fellow worker that passed away, that you would mention that the person, was overweight, and that was the reason why they fell off a faulty railing. We all know that this place is unsafe, that there's unsafe conditions almost everywhere in the system. And when I watched that, I remember watching Governor Cuomo, because they asked him about it. They asked everybody. They asked the MTA chairman at the time. And the MTA chairman came out, I believe it was Byford. He came out, gave conciliatory, statement, expressed condolences for the family, for MTA workers. Governor Cuomo came out, expressed condolences and everything. And then our union head comes out and says he was a big guy. I mean, I was so enraged at that. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you were to ask 90% of our workers something like that, they wouldn't mention that. And here again on this call, it goes to show that he has a mindset that he does not want to upset the bosses. It's like he has done nothing since he's been in a president of this union to actually upset the bosses. I mean, getting loud at a meeting is nothing. And this most recently, when we were when they threatened to freeze our wages, this upcoming contractually negotiated raise that we have secured, that's in writing, and the MTA neglected, threatened to freeze it. He said that they were going to have a fight, that they were going to be in the fight of their lives. And his release just now said that, it was a smart move. They would have faced the fight of their lives from Local 100. Has anybody here, I know everybody works at a different terminal, has anybody here seen anybody from the union come to the terminal and explain to the membership exactly what we would be doing in that fight? No. And even if they say that they were going to sue transit or whatever, why are you waiting for transit to make the next move?
Yeah.
Why are you waiting for that? And for him to frame this as he said we secured a victory on Thursday. What happened on Thursday was Biden had signed the $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, which had billions of dollars in it directed towards transit agencies throughout the country and state governments throughout the country. So what happened was an influx of money came in for which transit really had absolutely nothing or very little to do with, that the union had very little to do with. And he framed this as a victory for us, when in fact it was absolutely nothing done, and he wasn't prepared to do anything had this money came in. So it's not like this guy is like he's completely in the laps of the bosses, completely enthralled with the bosses. It's like he will do nothing, absolutely nothing, to upset the bosses for the benefit of us. Absolutely nothing.
Right. Well, also, I mean, I think that we need to be clear that Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus package, what it is setting up future higher taxes for working class and poor people to pay for it. We're going to get stuck with the bill.
Unless they pass some other sort of tax reform.
Right, exactly. Unless we start taxing the rich, unless we start forcing Bezos and the rest of these welfare queens in the ruling class. And that's exactly what they are. Don't let them confuse you at all. They are welfare cheats. They are tax frauds. They are being subsidized. Their criminal lack of paying a living wage to their own workers. You're paying for that. You're paying for that in Medicare. You're paying for that in food stamps. You're paying for that in unemployment insurance. You're paying for it to subsidize COVID aid for diseases that they were responsible for giving those workers. So when we talk about self-reliance and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and the American dream and all that bullshit, this is what they're trying to cover up. That fundamentally there's a class struggle, and there are two classes that are diametrically opposed to each other. If they win, we lose. If they win, we die. If they win, there's no future. That's what the class struggle is. That's the simplest distillation I can give you of it. And we have a side in that fight. And the side is always on the side of the workers and oppressed. Always and everywhere. If one worker loses, we all lose. If Bessemer, Alabama, Amazon workers lose their union recognition fight, it's disastrous for every single worker in this country and in all countries. Anyone who understands that Amazon is a beast that is destroying working class living standards is our enemy, and is basically developing an automated world where working class people have no future. If you don't see the handwriting on the wall, I don't know what to tell you, man. It's time, wakey. It's time to wake up. We have an enemy, and it's time to fight. But your union leadership is in the witness fucking protection program. Sure, Tony's been in fucking a bunker for almost a year. Sure, he's not worried about Alabama or Amazon workers. Sure, he's not worried about Breonna Taylor, because it doesn't mean anything to him. He can give his kids money all day long to go, do whatever they're doing on Uber and Lyft, and he doesn't have a clue about our lives. Anthony, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, I thought we weren't supposed to advocate for any other transportation agencies as members of transit.
I thought,
but why
doesn't Tony unionize them if he's so for Uber and Lyft? Why doesn't he unionize?
Exactly.
But I wanted to put one point though. That Lyft owns City Bike, by the way, just to put it out there. So
really?
Oh, okay. They're the bosses that we part of our. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I
Well,
don't know. That's an important fact. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead,
But
Anthony.
you know, I wanted to put it kind of like in a historical context and kind of like point out with the trends that are going on. Is like, you know, everything that people take for granted as like kind of like normal. You know, like even something like the weekend, the 40-hour work week, all these things. You know, a minimum wage, all of these things. All of these things, you know, were paid for in blood. They were fought for by socialist organizations, by unions, by people, you know, civil rights organizations, all of these things. You could actually just go down a list of certain things, you know, that people take for granted that historically people had to fight for. But what's happening, the trend now is people are actually normalizing, you know, and thinking it normal that you have to have 2 or 3 jobs to just pay the rent, you know, or to feed yourself. And, you know, to put it in kind of perspective, you know, the norm for capitalism is not to have a middle class, really, per se. The norm for capitalism is to have a very wealthy capitalist ownership and a poor, struggling working class. And when you had union membership, a peak union membership in this country, you had a sizable middle class, and you had a greater portion of the profits that were being earned being actually shared with the workers. But now what we're having is we're having less union membership and a greater portion of the profits going towards the upper class, the owners, the shareholders, the CEOs. And we're going to like basically a laissez-faire type of capitalism. And the working class has been losing for the past 50 years. And we need to have, you know, organizations like that we all pay our dues to as union members. We need to have this organization being in the forefront of reversing that trend. Yeah. So we can no longer afford to have people like with the mindset of Tony Utano in office. Now, I've said this before, it doesn't, you know, it's not totally predicated on one person being in office that we're going to turn this around. But we cannot afford to have people like that.
Right. Anthony, you froze.
In this office. Or people with that type of mindset anywhere near having influence or speaking for us.
Yeah. Anthony, you know, the other thing though too is that we've honest with our coworkers that the wrong leader of Local 100 at the wrong time could be the death of this union. And that's why we hold oppositionists to such a high standard. It's why we are so tough on them. It's not because we want to be ball busters. It's not because, you know, we're perfect and they're shit. Nobody's saying that. They all have attributes. They all have contributions to make. But we have to be very serious. It's an awesome amount of responsibility and power. And the consequences are just too damn great. And we just cannot allow anyone to take that power on a bunch of bullshit, weak sauce Obama promises that, you know, fetishizing certain words like hope and change and buy that bullshit anymore. It can't work. It leads to disaster. And it brought us Trump because the struggles that needed to be led weren't led. And that had huge consequences. Tom, I want you to be able to speak because I know you got to leave soon. And then I'm going to go into an executive board report a little bit. So go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to mention the thing that really struck me about what he said was the unbelievable that a union president would call the solution to a social problem that was started back in the 80s with Reagan slashing funding for drug interdiction, for drug and alcohol treatment, mental health issues, is more policing, not pointing out, taking that opportunity to point out that this is the fruit of that tree, that when you slash social spending and you don't have any kind of safety net there, you shouldn't be shocked that you're going to have people that are mentally ill, that are delusional, people that are self-medicating because they don't have health care and they don't have access to the legitimate psychopharmaceuticals they need. And so you've got a dangerous situation. And, but no, he wants more police in the system, busting heads and choking people and tasing people as the solution to make a safer transit system. And that also ties in with something I think it was Anthony mentioned was the fact that they are so far removed. It's been so many decades since there's been that kind of class conscious struggle that not only have they decided that they don't want to get involved in social justice issues, but even containing it to wages, they're dropping the ball, because after those treacherous 7 Democrats voted down the $15 an hour minimum wage, the AFL-CIO should have been organizing around-the-clock protests in the offices in D.C. and the home offices in every state of every one of those disgusting pieces of shit that voted against that $15 minimum wage, because that's something that definitely affects the working class, and how there hasn't been a peep out of any organized labor leader. Why wasn't Tony Otano talking about that?
Yeah. Well, he was, Jonathan wants to speak. I'm going to call on you next, but that's not the only thing he hasn't been talking about. He hasn't been talking about the PRO Act in the Congress right now, which is an act that would undo most of the harm done by Taft-Hartley, that most of the anti-union strike-breaking provisions, and would be the most progressive labor law ever passed in the history of this country, and I haven't said a fucking word.
By the way, the congresswoman who represents Staten Island and South Brooklyn, Nicole Malliotakis, voted against the PRO Act.
Okay.
So
just
to know that you know the freaking congresswoman who people want to say is for our issues voted against.
I guess Trammell will have to explain that one, huh? Trammell Thompson, you're gonna have to explain that one, huh? All right. Anyway,
don't give photo ops to these people, man.
Yeah, that's
don't
exactly
give photo ops to these people, man. They're using it.
Right. Jonathan, go ahead.
The policing in the transit system is actually worse than you think. I was a station agent for 11 years.
Right.
And what caught my ear when I saw that 1 hour video, with Tony Utano talking to the Manhattan Institute, what caught my ear was they kept mentioning we need police to be visible. But what they have is, especially when school gets out, in areas where there are high schools and in Black and brown communities. So I lived in Harlem for 5 years. My home station was 135th Street. I was lucky enough to be able to pick that station once a week. And also the Bronx, I worked in the Bronx, 3rd Avenue, 149th Street. They mainly target people in the Bronx, Harlem, and communities of color. And they have cops that they hide in the CTA room. They put a subway map of the window from the inside, poke a hole through it, so that they can peek through it to see to secretly try to catch people jumping the turnstile, and that's how. And their goal, instead of preventing people from doing it, is to catch people from doing it, to get a collar. And I think that's the root of the problem of policing and profiling, because your job, though boring as it might be, if you're out there in uniform standing in front of the turnstiles, nobody's going to jump the turnstile, and you're going to be seen standing there doing nothing. But that should be their job, not trying to catch somebody, but trying to prevent it.
Well, look, I mean, talking about preventing crime,
numbers,
all they're looking to do is meet the quota. That's all they're looking to do.
Right.
That and please their higher ups, but who are just as racist as they are. But in any case, at 179, we had 2 incidents with platform controllers assaulted in less than a week. One incident, somebody pulled out a knife on 2 of our platform controllers on the platform, because the trains relay there. It's the last stop, so they have to clear the trains out so they can be cleaned. So then the next week, there was a spitting assault. And that one almost ended up in a 12-9 because the person started grabbing a mop and trying to threaten people who he just spit on. and one of them almost got hit by a train. So I was in contact with the line superintendent over this to demand that he do something about the safety of our members up there. That, as much as I have my serious misgivings about the police under any circumstances, the fact is, if they were there on the platform, it would be somewhat of a deterrent, and at least they would be able to handle the mess they created instead of our members having to deal with it. But so what ends up happening? They are at they're 3 stations away. They're at Briarwood. There's a transit district 20 is at Briarwood. They're like 3 or 4 stops away. So they get off. So they're pissed off. They got to come up there at all, right? They get off the train. What's the first thing they do? Both of them, 2 uniformed officers, right up to the mezzanine. Because in the mezzanine, you can use your cell phone so that they can be online doing whatever the fuck they're doing when they're supposed to be out here providing a visible deterrent and dealing with the social disorder that the ruling class created and that they foisted upon essential workers. So, yeah, John Chiarello, I'm a snitch like that. So I did call the superintendent, okay, to say that that's not what we need them there for. If they're not going to be on the platform, there's no point in them being there. So if you want to call me a snitch, for that, go right ahead, John. But go ahead, Jonathan. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's the story. That's what happened.
Yeah. So
the first time they twisted a story like that. I have another friend who was accused of being a snitch.
No, that's not the story. No, Jonathan, that's not the story. The story of me being a snitch was about track safety, where there was unsecured debris on the tracks all over the system. And after reaching out to the track crews that were responsible for that area, telling them to write G2s and telling them to protect themselves and to bang in the safety conditions, weeks later, almost a month later, I went to upper management because I repeatedly called it in over the radio. They wouldn't do anything. And I repeatedly brought it up to union officials. They wouldn't do anything. So then I brought it up to higher levels of management because a train operator could get killed walking around those tracks at night with debris all over the roadbed on the catwalks that are supposed to be used as emergency evacuation situations, right?
But it's an election year. Yeah. It's an election year, so they have to twist it some way to
Right. So John Chiarello is going around calling me a rat because I eventually informed New York City management. After I informed him, after I informed the track gangs involved, after I went, Eric Josephson went out there to try to help them write the statements, and he didn't lift a finger. And then he told me later, you know what he told me later? Oh, I could have helped you. That would have been no problem to get the debris cleared up. But I didn't like the way you didn't come to me personally. So basically, I got to beg him. He didn't like that I didn't kiss his ass. So he's not going to do anything for members. So he's going to risk his own union members' lives and support management not doing what they're supposed to do to safeguard our safety. But that's a great union leader there. Right. That's what we should trust. So in any case, I want to go into the executive board report because we're getting a little bit long on this meeting, and I want to be able to cover everything. All right. So there's a one of the reasons why they called an early executive board meeting is because of this. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's a memorandum of understanding between Liberty Lines Transit System and the Transport Workers Union of America. So they wanted to call this meeting real quick so they can get a quick vote and get this contract out to the membership. So I'll save you the suspense. I was the only one that voted against it, okay? And they called for a roll call vote to make sure they knew who voted against it. And I want to explain to you why I voted against it. I voted against it because it's a 5-year contract, okay? It's actually 4 years because they've been without a contract since March 1st of, it is a full 5-year it's a full 5-year contract. It goes into effect March 21st, 2021, and ends on February 28, 2026. So it's a 5-year contract in the middle of the worst depression in the history of this country. It rivals the Great Depression of the 1930s, may even be worse than that. As a matter of principle, I will never vote for a 5-year contract because it's against our interest as working class people to put ourselves and lock ourselves into concessionary bargaining for a 5-year period. So you can I can guarantee you, I don't care what the wage numbers are, I don't agree with it. But let's talk about the wage numbers. So the first wage increase on March 1st, 2021, 1.75% increase. March 2022, 2%. 2023, 2.25%. 2024, 2.5%. 2025, 2.5%. Okay, this is, if in local 100 members, in case you were wondering the kind of bargaining that your union was going to do in an era of coronavirus, this is the best we can expect, apparently. Okay, so voting for this contract says that it's okay, and I'm not okay with that. And I don't think I was elected to the executive board to rubber stamp these kind of concessionary bargaining things. Jonathan, I'll get to you in a minute.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I missed something. Who is this for?
This is for Liberty Lines. It's a private bus company. Okay, it's in the school bus private lines division. So in any case, the other reason why I voted against the contract, do you know that these bus drivers still have split RDOs? They don't have 2 days together. After all these years of being unionized, they don't have 2 days together. I just can't justify voting for a contract that says that it's okay for that to continue. Okay, then on top of that, they have 8 total sick floating holidays combined, 8. And this is an improvement from what they had previously. This is actually an increase. Then their pension multiplier. They brag about the pension multiplier went from $110 to $115. For local 100 members who don't understand what that means, they don't have a defined benefit pension program like we have. So for every year that you work here, you get 2%. 2% times 25 equals 100% to give you a full 50% of your wages when you leave here. And then the rest is made up by Social Security. So it's based on how much you work and how much overtime you do and how much wages increase. It's an average of the best 3 years of any 5-year period for tier 4, an average of the best 5 years for tier 6. They don't have that. They have a set number that everybody gets. And that number, when you calculate 115 times 12 months times however many years the person works. And what you'll come up with is basically about $34,000 is what they're going to wind up with a year at the end. And assume, let's be generous and assume that Social Security is going to give them an equal amount. Are you going to support your family when you're on a fixed income and you're retired on $68,000 in New York City? And not now, 20 years from now. So in good conscience, I can't vote for a contract that says that continuing is okay. Not to mention the fact there's not a goddamn peep in this contract about COVID-19 safety. The only thing they mention is Paul parroting the state programs that they have nothing to do with. The state COVID paid leave program that they had nothing to do with, and that they allowed New York City Transit to violate for almost 8 months and deny our members access to for almost 8 months. So I voted against it, and you all can go all over Facebook and go to your union meetings and tell them that I was the problem, I was the traitor who voted against this great contract. So in any case, another report about the executive board meeting.
I have a question, John.
No, go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
So, I mean, they obviously rushed this vote on you guys. So, did they have a discussion on the actual contract, or they were like, "It's great, here you go, boom, vote"?
No, what they did was they brought the bargaining committee up to give the highlights and tell you how great it was, and to tell you how much their pension is going to increase because of this $5 multiplier, and how great it is that they're going to get paid days off for a perfect attendance bonus. Think of how intergalactically stupid it is for a union leadership to be negotiating an on-time perfect attendance bonus in the middle of a goddamn pandemic.
And then I guess you also have other bus drivers, other departments that are probably like, these guys really, they're not getting what we get, in general. So they should be on par with other members.
Of course.
That's a fucking given. Pardon my friend, it's a given. Like,
absolutely.
That's sad. Like, none of the bus guys should have voted for it. They should have said, listen, we want our brothers and sisters to have the same benefits that we have, at least.
Well, the other thing, though, too, is that where were the militants in RTO? They all voted for it. Every one of them voted for it. I was the only one who voted against it. Now, Evangeline came in late. I don't know whether she voted for it, but everybody else did. So, so much for an opposition. Jonathan, go ahead. I seen you had your hand up. Oh, okay. All right. All right. So then just to get the rest of the report out, after this took up the majority of the 45-minute executive board meeting. And after they did a roll call vote to find out who the traitor was who voted against this contract, then Tony starts answering questions, right? So I raised questions about him meeting with union busters and racists, and the Yankee Stadium bleacher creatures went in uproar. And I know, Anthony, you think it's personal. It has nothing to do with the Yankees. It's just the kind of moral people, the drunks who hang out and baking their brains in the sun all summer, the kind of reaction they would have. Okay, I don't want to get on your bad side there, Anthony. But in any, go ahead, Jonathan.
You can blame it on the guys in the blue seats.
Oh, you mean at the garden? Yeah. Okay. All right. The blue seat crowd. So in any case, they're all in uproar. They won't let me speak. They basically call for me to sit down, and they basically shout me down. And I also brought up other issues about the Ernst & Young fishing expedition to kick our dependents off our health care. And Tony basically lied his ass off and said, oh, it's on the BSC. The paperwork for the affidavit is on the BSC. That night I looked on the BSC, not on the BSC. You know when the deadline is? March 30th. So March 30th, the deadline's been extended as an affidavit process. You can self-certify your dependents. Yet, where is the information coming from your union about this? So I'm going to try to get the information and get it out to members. But I just want to pivot, because that was the only really kind of worthy stuff that happened at the executive board. Oh, the other thing, there was one other thing, and it's very important. The first thing I asked Tony was, where is the lawsuit for RTO? Where is the lawsuit to stop the MTA from violating the New York State Public Authorities law by not having public hearings before they implemented significant service cuts? And his response was that that this is not for an executive board meeting. You shouldn't be bringing this up at an executive board meeting. So I said, well, this is the highest decision-making body of the union. What do you mean I shouldn't be bringing it up here? I figured the lawyers would be here. I figured maybe I can get an answer. So Eric Logel gets up and said, I gave you an answer at the conductors meeting. I told you I gave you an answer. So I said, yeah, what was your answer? They're working on it. I said, yeah, Eric, I'm not satisfied with your answer. That's why I'm asking Tony. Maybe all you got to do is copy and paste. I will show you right now the lawsuit from the station agent grievance and the language of the judge. So you guys don't think we're making this up, that it's illegal. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on a second. All right, so here's the station agent lawsuit. It's called Espaillat versus Foy. Okay, it's a station agent lawsuit, and it was a lawsuit to stop the MTA from cutting lunch relief jobs in the booths and basically leaving the booths unmanned for long periods of time. And obviously, the logic behind that was that it was unsafe for the riding public. They made a safety argument, and they won. And so here's the judge's ruling. The reason why I'm doing this is because the language is important. Okay, so here is the analysis and conclusion. Based on the testimony adduced at the hearing and evidence presented therein, the court finds that the elimination of duties for those transit workers who provided lunch relief for station agents will result in significant token booth closures within the city of New York. Such closures clearly constitute a reduction of services and a reduction of access to the system by the general public. The court further finds that these closures trigger the requirement for public hearings pursuant to the Public Access Law, PAL, 1204 and 1205. The respondents assert that their decision to eliminate lunch relief is merely, quote, a reallocation of staffing, which does not violate the PAL. However, that assertion is not correct. So in any case, this language is the language that we need to file a lawsuit for not only the C and the F line, but also for the platform controllers. Does anybody want to tell me that judge is going to look favorably on cutting the jobs of platform controllers who are in a position to assist the riding public in the middle of a pandemic, and that they're not going to consider that a service cut, that services are no longer being provided to the riding public that were once provided, and they're doing it without public hearings? And guess who the arbitrator was who ruled against the station agents in the first place to say rubber stamp the MTA's cutting of lunch relief assignments. Oh, his name was Mr. Edelman.
Edelman, yeah.
And who was the arbitrator who ruled against RTO leadership in the case about the F-line pick? Oh, Edelman. So it's the same goddamn arbitrator. It's the same violation of the law. But you guys are not really concerned about filing a lawsuit, are you? And so then Eric was like, oh, well, I told you we're working on it. I said, well, the cuts go in effect next Sunday. When are you going to work on it? What's to work on? These guys are on full-time paid release, making way more than we are. Their lawyers are making money we couldn't even imagine. But they don't got no time for that. But Tony's got time to meet with fucking union busters and racist scumbags and our boss. But doesn't have no time to be at a town hall meeting with Sarah Feinberg, which we're going to show you a video of later.
Well, Feinberg actually agreed with you that the judge ruled in favor of the union with the
but she says it doesn't apply in this case because these are
because it's a small cut. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to go to that right now. I'm going to go to the video. Okay. Hold on. Let me just share my screen again. Sorry about so many screen shares, but I had to. All of them were important, basically. There we go. Let's see. There we go. I have it all queued. I had it all queued up anyway. Let's see here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so this is a town hall meeting with Sarah Feinberg, MTA transit worker, town hall, that took place on Friday. And I want you to note the difference in the approach of transit union officers and that of Tony Town.
All it says is iPhone, so we'll see if we can see your name pop up. Yeah, we just heard your name. Go ahead and introduce yourself because we can't see your name.
Me? You hear me?
You got it. Yeah.
My name is Chris Drummond. I'm vice chair conductor.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris.
And I just want to say, and I'm not sure they're conveying what's going on the road with us. When the member picks his job, he spends weeks, sometimes months, trying to figure out what's best for him in terms of child care, religious observance, doctor's appointments. When families are going to be in town, it's a real laborious task. And we thought that we was entitled to that. When you came here, or your colleagues came here, and got your job offered, you looked at schools, you looked at how this will work, fit to your life. That's what we do. What happened with the F-line? And what happened with platform controllers? Totally obliterated our lives. And last town hall, we had a platform controller ask you about the rumors of the platform control program being disbanded, and I think you told them that wasn't the case. And for a minute, it was jubilation at Queens Plaza, Whitehall, Grand Central, and a few days after that, their hopes came crashing down because the program was disbanded with prejudice. Management didn't care what they didn't give them scratches, they didn't forewarn them, and we took you, Madam President, on your word. And I think this is, and I'm not saying you per se, I'm saying the coaching, but this is indicative of almost the disregard for our lives and the morale, this low morale. There's a human cost to all this. People don't know they're scurrying to try to reprogram their lives now. And I just don't understand why it's just on a constant basis. It's as if almost that management holds us in utter contempt. Because the human cost and emotional toll that it takes on us, nobody cares. I understand you just ran the numbers about service cuts and the matrix on, but that's still not taking account. What about us?
broke my heart every day. But let's talk about what we're talking about, which is the C, I think, is the C line and the F line, okay? So because ridership was way down, we never brought the C and the F line all the way up. To be clear, what we're talking about, so the folks that know, is changes in headways from 2.5 to 4 minutes, and from, I don't know, I'll find it, 5 to 7 minutes. I mean, I get it. I know that these are important reductions and that people are frustrated by them. But we then had conversations with the union, and they said, at least run a line pick. At least run a line pick on the C line and the F line. So we did. And people are still frustrated. So, look, I get it. Like, there are a certain number of jobs in the C line, a certain number of jobs in the F line, and you want that number to be back. We've made some shifts. We cannot function like there has been no impact of COVID and no change to ridership whatsoever. We are running as much service as we possibly can. We've said for many months that our priorities will always be not making major service changes and not making layoffs. While many other entities around the country have done both of those and much more. No layoffs, no furloughs, no massive draconian service changes. But we can't do nothing. Like, we're just not going to be able to do nothing. And so I hear you. If you were one of the people on the C line or one of the people on the F line where you did not like how the pick went, then you're frustrated. I got it. But like, this is a big place with 55,000 people that got killed by COVID. And there are going to be some changes that we cannot avoid. And that's why we're keeping a close eye on it. But the reality is that when I'm at 40% ridership and 30% ridership on those lines, I'm going to keep a really close eye on it. But that doesn't mean we're not going to make some changes to make the service smoother and the staffing smoother. And we can continue to talk about it, but I also want to make sure we get to other questions too. But we're going to unmute you because I'm sure Chris, you want to respond too.
It's not frustration. To be honest with you, it's devastation. And I understand what you're saying, but again, we're talking about how you have a workforce. And it's easy for, like, I'm sure that you're doing anything you can. Now, I don't know who make all these decisions. I'm sure these decisions are made by comedian. You only can go with the information you get on film. But we're talking nothing short of people's lives being devastated. From AMs being forced to go to midnight, and PMs and it's devastating people's lives. And that's everything. Who can argue the numbers? But what we talked about here is a workforce who is trying to have a semblance of a life, and who picked a semblance of, and it's been blown to shreds. And again, Madam President, can you address the platform controller program, what happened there?
So number one, again, I believe what we're talking about is a handful of people who, you were right, when the pick came up, did not get the job that they wanted. I got it. That is not fun for them. I don't know. I mean, look, I want to hear individual stories, and when the union raised holy hell about this, despite being the ones that asked for the line pick in the first place, I said, share stories with me. We always try to be helpful and see what we can do. They sent me a bunch of emails from folks. I will tell you that I have not actually sensed devastation. I have sensed I'm frustrated because I like working this job and now I'm working that job, and I got it. And I do not want to make life harder for anybody. But I'm also saying that in a workforce of 55,000 people, you have $20 million lost, ridership at 30%. I hear you that it's not about the numbers. It's not about the numbers. I want everyone to pick the job they want and to be happy every day and to be fulfilled and to enjoy the work that they're doing. We're not perfect. I can't get there during COVID, and I can't hit perfection. My platform controllers, I want to make sure that I'm up to speed. But the platform controllers, people were suggesting the last town hall meeting that those jobs are going away. Again, we have not done layoffs. We have not done furloughs. In fact, a bunch of people were working from home, even though their jobs weren't work from homeable. We brought people back. We may have said you got to go back on the road jobs. We may have said you were a platform controller and now we need you to go back to being a conductor like you were before. But we have not gotten rid of jobs. So I want to be really clear about that. We have not done layoffs. We have not done furloughs. And there may be some uncomfortable things that happen during now and over the course of the coming years because we've been devastated by COVID. But I'm pretty damn proud of the fact that we haven't had to lay off anybody, we haven't furloughed anybody, and we haven't had draconian service changes. And we're going to continue to try it. And the worst thing that we're talking about 3 months from now and 6 months from now is that, you know, the F line has 4.5-minute headways instead of 2.5-minute headways. It's still going to have pissed off a bunch of people who are operating the F and we're writing the F. But I will consider that a win, because if that's the worst that comes out of this, like, we're desperately trying to keep our head above water. Okay. So then I don't see anybody else's hand up, so I'll just remind folks if they have a question.
By the way, I'm raising my hand the whole time
Any questions about vaccines?
and putting it in the chat that I want to speak, and she's ignoring me so far.
Hands up. We have folks in the chat saying your hand is up and your hand is not up. Or we can tell that your hand is up. It's not showing that your hand is up. John Ferretti, your hand is not up. Can we proactively unmute him? We're going to try to proactively unmute you, but your hand is, your hand thing is not up.
Okay.
Go ahead, John. I think I got an email from you on CNF line, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, and I just wanted to follow up on your answers. I couldn't unmute on my app, so for whatever reason.
That's okay.
All right. So look, the bottom line is that this is a public service. This is not a business. Okay. You got $14.5 billion from the federal government. That comes from our tax dollars. It does not come from your pocket. You are to provide service. That's fine, but it doesn't personally come from the MTA's pocket. No MTA manager is suffering tragedy by having to come up with this money. It is our tax dollars that pay for a public service. That public service is about to be having 500,000 at least more riders dumped on it when the schools open on March 22nd. Yet the day before that, on March 21st, you're massively cutting service on the F line. Okay, the F line, you talk about it being 2 and 4-minute headways. What you don't take into account is that you're dumping more work onto less transit workers, and you're throwing a wrecking ball through people's lives, and you're piling more people onto less trains. It may look good on a spreadsheet, but we are in an era of COVID, and 150 of our members died. So I don't want to hear about how you had a bad year last year, because we had a hell of a lot worse one, okay? The bottom line is you're violating the law. It is illegal for you to push through service cuts of any kind without public hearings, and you have not done it. And a judge told you in the station agent case, when you tried to cut lunch relief assignments, he told you were violating the New York State Public Authorities law, and you're violating it, and you've been violating it for over a year. So what I want to know is, what gives the MTA the right to have a blank check to violate the law anytime they feel like it? But when Long Island Railroad riders are upset, they get immediate action to address their concerns, but yet the overwhelmingly Black and Latino working class riders in New York City get ignored, and not only that, you double down on the cuts. 29 job cuts on the F for conductors, 29 for train operators. That is, you try to make it seem like you negotiate with the union. The union asked you to undo the damage you already caused, and you threw gas on the fire. You gave them triple the job cuts you had on the C line. So don't tell me you were trying to cooperate with the union. I know you may not be in the negotiations, but the MTA was not trying to be an honest broker here. They were deliberately looking to attack and humiliate and assault union members who sacrificed their lives. So don't tell me you were trying to negotiate in good faith, because that's a lie. And when are you going to stop violating the law? That's the question I want you to answer.
Okay, so thanks for your questions or your comments. Just to remind folks, and I'm happy to take it, again, you can ask me anything, and you can yell at me, and you can scream at me. That's part of my job. I'm here to take it. But we've got 70-some or 67, frequently we have 120-some people on this still, and frequently we have 200, 300, 350. So just know that when you're taking your time screaming at me, I got it, I can take it, but just let's give other people an opportunity to have their voices heard and ask their questions too. This is becoming a CNNF town hall. That's fine if all 123 of you are interested in that, but let's just try to be respectful of each other too. I'm happy to take it, but I don't yell at you and I don't scream at people, and so I'd love it if the same respect was shown my way. So first of all, I think you're conflating two things. So on the station side, on the lunch relief, you're exactly right. The judge said you can't change the way you're staffing these booths, even for this small amount of time, without having a public hearing. And so we said, got it, and I think folks are planning a public hearing about that at some point. So again, the judge said, can't make these changes unless you do a public hearing. On the C and the F line, and in terms of service, the rules about service cuts are that you cannot cut service completely and kill it, like a bus route, or make significant changes to service without going to a public hearing. These are 15% changes to lines, 10% changes to lines. I understand they feel significant. I understand that for the 29 conductors and the 29 train operators, it feels very significant. In terms of public policy and public law, it is not deemed significant enough that we have to have a public hearing about the changes in headways and the changes in service on these two lines. If 500,000 more riders come back to the system on Tuesday, whatever that is, next week, on the 22nd, then we will have popped from 1.8 million daily riders. We've been hovering between 1.6 and 1.8 million daily riders for about 2 months. If we suddenly overnight go to 2.5 million riders, that will absolutely probably make us look closely at if we're providing the right service. Just like post-COVID, some of the peaks have changed. Post-COVID, some of the loads have changed. So we are watching this. We are sending traffic checkers out there all the time. It's not just about a spreadsheet. I make them send me photos of the cars that are most packed on the C and F line, so I can see it for myself. I frequently ride the C. I sometimes ride the F.
Sorry, guys, hold on a second. I hear
you that the 29 conductors.
I gotta freeze the video of Robot Barbie here, and let's go back to our meeting. So in any case, we basically have the response from Sarah Feinberg. That's basically a lie. She said that the law says that it has to be a significant change, like eliminating a bus line. That's not what the judge said, first of all. Second of all, the union won on this issue. And if you're told I want to ask any working class person, if you're told you're breaking the law, what happens in that case? What are the consequences for you? You go to jail, right? You certainly can be fined. You'll have to pay a ticket. You'll have to have a bench appearance ticket and have to go down to court and explain why you think you can violate the law willfully. As a transit worker, can you do things that are illegal and say, yeah, that law is not for me? You know, that rule in the rule book, they were crazy when they wrote that rule up. I'm not going to follow it. What are they going to do? No, you can't do that, can you? Because working class people live in the real world and they have consequences for their actions. And the reason why Sarah, in her privilege, in her whatever they call it, what do they call those, the top floor, the penthouse, in her penthouse office, where she don't have to deal with any of the dirty conditions we have to deal with down here in the subways, feels like, but what are you going to do about it? Who's going to enforce the law? And why wouldn't she feel that way when we have a union leadership that can't do the most basic thing to file a lawsuit? So I'm appealing to those watching this live stream. If you know a lawyer, I want a really bloodthirsty lawyer. I want somebody who wants to burn the MTA down and dance around the fire. Okay? If you're a political figure that we have worked with to provide solidarity for you when you were running for office, we expect you to be giving us a call or an email about how you are going to have our back to file a lawsuit in New York State court or in federal court to bring a stop to this job cut, to bring a stop to the service cuts, because we are not putting up with this any longer. And we're not waiting for Tony Utano and Eric Logel to find a clue and figure out how to copy and paste the same goddamn lawsuit and put the information about RTO in. That's all they had to do. And also, I want people to, in all honesty, like me and Chris Drummond, we have differences politically. Like, he's not very supportive of Black Lives Matter protest in a lot of respects. He's not for defunding the police. We have differences. But you see how Chris stayed in her ass all the time. He wouldn't let her change the topic. He kept going back at her, and he kept forcing her to understand the consequences our members were facing. That's what a union advocate does. That's what a union leader does. You don't just say, oh, I'm your friend. How can we work together? Why don't you help us? That doesn't work, does it? So anyway, I'm going to open the floor because I've talked way too much about this. So who wants to talk? Alberto, you're elected.
Well, yeah, like you were saying before, she actually agreed that you said that that the judge ruled in our favor, but then she completely said, well, in this case, it wouldn't work. And it's like, where do we begin with these? First of all, she doesn't want to take responsibility, and then she says that the union demanded a line pick, and it's like, no, they didn't demand a line pick. Some people want a line pick because they were getting reassigned. Some people didn't. So either way, it was a lose-lose. We didn't want a line pick. Or if we want a line pick, we want a line pick with no jobs cut, as you were saying. So, I mean, it has to work. Like, I don't understand why they, and then she's always comes from a place of privilege. So she's always going to, listening to her is kind of like, why do I bother listening to you? You're not on the front lines with us. You're not you're not in the trenches. You're working from home for the most part. You're not out there. So I don't, whenever she speaks, it's kind of like it falls on deaf ears because it's insulting, and she had to contend with the 150 deaths of MTA workers this past year. Like that's her tenure. That's going to be her legacy. She's going to have to accept that. And I don't know if these consolations she's always throws at us, if it's supposed to make us feel better, like, oh, well, you didn't get furloughed, you didn't get your job cut.
Yeah, you should love me because I didn't fire you.
Yeah, it's like,
that was her attitude. It was like, you should love me. You should really love me. I saved your jobs. She saved their jobs. Karen, who's going to call my manager on me, she's who are you peasant, to talk to me like this? How dare you talk to me like this? I'm going to talk to your manager. That's her response. And this is who Tony Utano's afraid of? Really? I mean, really, this is our opposition.
Yeah.
And you're scared shitless of this?
Yeah.
Come on.
Someone who's afraid to get yelled at.
I didn't even I spoke louder here. I spoke louder here in this live stream than I spoke on that. In that conversation.
New York volume. Spoke at New York volume, and she's not used to that.
Yeah. Anthony, you want to give it?
She couldn't handle the volume.
Yeah, it's contemptible, for her response. I mean, I'm listening to you and Drummond. I'm listening to Drummond, and he's trying to explain to her that you have people whose lives have been disrupted by what they did. They totally disregard, and she basically had a contemptible response. And as you were saying, they're talking about you're talking about her violating the law, the MTA violating the law, and they routinely do this, and they really don't care, And if we have a union that doesn't fight back, why shouldn't they violate the law? Why shouldn't they if they're going to get away with it? I mean, it's to be heard, and for you to be told by our VP that they're working on it. Well, what exactly are they doing? I mean, if they're not filing a lawsuit, what exactly are they doing? Are they going back and begging for those jobs to be restored?
You know what Eric told me? Eric told me that he solicited sympathy and pity letters from the crews affected on the F line to send to him so he could send them to Sarah Feinberg. And you see her response. Oh, I don't sense any devastation here. They're just frustrated that they don't have the same job. That was her response.
Why, if I'm in a union, do I have to beg for the boss's sympathy? That's not what a union does.
Exactly.
That's not what a union does. See, I understand that we're limited in taking the traditional actions of a union when they're being, subject to unsafe conditions or job cuts or wage disputes or whatever. I understand that by law we're limited, but there's several other things that we could do. But it seems like these guys are completely. They don't want to upset the bosses. They don't want to go against the flow, and it's like it seems as if they don't want to get the average member who really holds the power involved in these struggles, involved in these fights. Because if you could go to one terminal, and maybe 3 or 4 bus terminals, one subway terminal, 2 subway terminals, 3 or 4 bus terminals, just do the right thing, and you would get action. They would be forced to listen to us, and they would be forced to do what make sure that we're safe.
Anthony,
and that's
I'm sorry.
I really don't. Guys talk about it's personal or whatever, or it's a matter of personality or whatever. And I'm going to say this again because I can't say it enough. I really don't care, and I don't think the average guy, train operator, bus operator, tower operator, conductor. I don't think the average person, the average rank and file worker, really cares who is the president or vice president. They don't really care who the name is, who the face is. They just want them to do what they're supposed to do. Yeah. And these guys aren't doing it.
Well, the other thing though too is that you want to hear something really funny? Eric at the conductors meeting this week, he came to a union meeting. It should, I'm sure there'll be a ticker tape parade following that he showed up at the union hall and actually had to speak to members. So he was there and he dominated most of the meeting with all this offline stuff. But what he said was that the next step for them after they lost the grievance, right? And then he tries to lie and say he didn't expect to win the grievance. What he expected was an early pick, and that's why they filed the grievance, right? So the strategy going forward was this Feinberg meeting, was the meeting with Feinberg, the town hall with Feinberg, and encouraging rank and file members to get on and to share their experiences and to take on Feinberg and expose what's going on here. Yet, who's on the live stream with Sarah Feinberg? 1, 2, 3 Local 100 Fightback members, a union rep that's at 2 Broadway handling cases, who's on his lunch break, Chris Drummond, and nobody from the VP or anybody else in the RTO leadership or the union leadership. I guess Tony Yatano was busy meeting with union bosses and fucking racist and couldn't be bothered to show up. But if you take them at their word that this is their strategy, well, what are you doing to organize workers to do anything? Not to mention the fact that during the meeting, he said again and again, we were trying to negotiate with them in good faith. We were trying to go through the negotiation process, and we really thought they would work with us. And given that 150 of our members died, okay, given what we are all facing out here, what kind of clueless moron do you really have to be to think that the MTA is really looking to help us out, really looking to negotiate in good faith? And if you know they're not negotiating in good faith, why do you continue to negotiate with them? Why didn't you go to court last year? Why wouldn't you do that? When you filed a station agent lawsuit, why didn't you file a joint lawsuit? Say they're violating the law in both cases. Judge, rule on it. No, they don't do that. Now, you lost the grievance. You had nobody mobilized to the town hall with Sarah Feinberg. So what's the next step, guys? Are we going to file a lawsuit now? Oh, we're working on it. I mean, it's like a fire department that knows the house is on fire, and they're like, yeah, we'll get there. We'll be there eventually.
I think it's more like a body, and you have like a disease that kind of like doesn't kill you all at once, but it's slowly, the symptoms appear one at a time, and if you don't address it, eventually it will kill you. Yep. And that's what we're seeing with this union and unionism pretty much all throughout the country, is that little by little they're taking away the power, and we're allowing that power to be taken away. And
eventually, we take the power away from them. I mean, that's the bottom line here. We have to rip the power away from them. We have the power.
You can't rely on negotiating with people, you know, or somebody's sympathy to give you what you want, what you need. They really don't care.
Anthony, what was the reward for the sympathy? Do you see this snarky, arrogant, ruling class ivory tower piece of garbage? She uses it as a bat against you now, you idiots. Oh, you wanted a line pick. You wanted a line pick. You wanted a line pick. Do you see why this is a terrible strategy? Do you see why fixating on one method of struggle, one tactic is stupid, and it gives the game away? Umberto, you want to comment on this? We got to wrap up.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. Like, she was gonna put the onus on the union, and like I said, maybe some people wanted a line pick, some people didn't, but it's a Band-Aid. It's not really. And like I said, if you have a line pick, then you have to do it right. You have to, have the GO jobs available. You can't just say, we're going to have a line pick and now we're going to cut even more jobs and throw this back at you. And then when you complain about it, and you're going to say, well, this is what you wanted. So either way, it's lose-lose for us. Right. So the problem is people writing, it's always been the supplements. Supplements are not working. They're not. Well, supplements aren't really supplements. They're just cutting jobs and then putting a supplement saying it's a supplement. But it's really job cuts, so they're going to try to give it to us in that way, but it's not working. And then the woe was you, like, we're in a pandemic, woe was you. But hey, we've been working here for a full year now. The system never stopped running. We ran the system. So, we've been here through death, through sickness. We've been here, man. We've been working, making the system run. So this is how they reward us, as always. Don't even ask about hazard pay, because that's whatever. That's not even on the pipeline. Oh, yeah. But I'm just saying, the way they treat us, oh, you're essential. Here's a blue and orange mask. Here you go. But then, like, when we ask for a decent schedule, I want a schedule for my family, And I was on the C line earlier in the year, last year, and I had a newborn, and I was getting reassigned, so I couldn't do it. So, like, I had the seniority enough to, and the fortune, I was fortunate enough to be able to bid out, and I lucked out. I got my last bid, so. But not everybody's that lucky. I got lucky, but not everybody's that fortunate, and some people don't have that seniority. So it's unfair. Like, we're dealing with a pandemic. We're trying to figure out our lives. Some people don't have a spouse or a partner working who's at home. We're the only ones that can work, and we're out there risking our lives. And this is how they treat us. They can't even give us a decent schedule or some kind of empathy. If you're gonna make me extra, then work with us. Don't yell at me.
Location. Yeah, at least put me at a certain location. Put me at a certain time. At least I picked the same tour.
I put in the G2 because I was in the Charlie. So I said, you know what? I was like, well, I put in the G2, which means I request. I said, can you put me on the M line? The M line is part of the North. Put me on the M line. You know what they told me? You work on the C, so you need to belong on the C. And I'm like, if they reassign you to the Mikey and they say, and I say, well, why don't you assign me to the C? What are they gonna tell you? Yeah. The Mikey's part of the North. Deal with this. So I'm saying, okay, so keep me in the North. I live close to the Mikey. I can work out of the Mikey. I don't care. Just keep me over there. No, they couldn't help me, So I had to bid out.
I just want to kind of get some of the lessons of why the same rules apply to the political fights as the class struggle. Schumer, they have him on a live Zoom call for the union. They do nothing but kiss his ass and tell him what a great guy he is and how he's our hero and how he's fighting for us. And the discussion of hazard pay comes up, and what does Schumer say? Oh, the mean, nasty Republicans blocked it. So does anybody in the room say, so now the Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So when are you getting it done? No, nobody says anything. So is it a surprise we're not getting hazard pay? A $1.9 trillion stimulus bill gets passed. No hazard pay for anybody. That's another one of those miracles, huh? Anthony asked about the upcoming pick in the chat. The upcoming pick is in limbo. The only rules for the upcoming pick is the arbitrator's decision right now, which says that the MTA must implement a summer pick in July or August, which is useless for us. Because if there's a summer pick in August, that does people no good who plan their schedule around their children, being able to take vacations, spend time with their family, childcare responsibilities, all the rest of that. And it's basically a way for the MTA to push their foot in the door further and further towards a one-year pick and towards gutting our pick rights. Because our enemy knows that the battle is going to be enjoined, is going to be over what we still got left. They never think we gave enough. Doesn't matter that we haven't had a wage increase beyond inflation for over 20 years. It doesn't matter that we die on average 2 or 3 years after we retire down here. It doesn't matter that 150 of us died of COVID. It doesn't matter that tens of thousands of us were infected needlessly by their incompetence. They still think you can give more. And so the bottom line is, we're the union that is an abortion of trade unionism and doesn't understand things that Frederick Douglass taught us 170 something years ago, that power concedes nothing without a demand, that without struggle there is no progress. Are you surprised we're losing? And what I want you guys to do is don't let these charlatans who are running for office, who say they're going to solve all your problems and they're the hero and they're coming to the rescue and they've been waiting and they're chomping at the bit to lead the fight for you. Don't let them off the hook when they come and say they're going to save you, unless they got answers to these questions, unless they have concrete proposals about how we're going to unite with the rest of the working class, how we are going to raise the profile of Local 100 as a champion for social justice, how we're going to have the back of other workers. Because if they ain't got no answers to that, then they ain't got no better answers than Tony Utano has. He's got bad answers, and they got no answers. And neither one of them is a strategy for a future for us. Anybody else want to speak before we wrap up? Anthony?
He's on
yeah. Well, this is kind of like it isn't pretty related to what we've covered today, but recently it is related, but it's not. It's kind of off the topic a little. A Republican senator, Ron Johnson, he in an interview, and I'm gonna quote his words. He says he wasn't scared during the January 6th insurrection, and he said he wasn't scared because he knew that these people, those were people that love this country, truly respect law enforcement, would never do anything to break a law. And had Trump won and those were thousands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa protesters, I might have been concerned. Now, you see, we got to understand what it is we're actually facing. You know, it's like they want to break off and start their own party, you know, a nationalist party. We're seeing a rise in this country of extremism, and it's coming from the right. It isn't really coming from the left. The left has been losing for the past 40, 50 years, so much so that people actually think that Joe Biden is some sort of radical leftist. He's being labeled as a radical leftist. And in reality, you know, he's not. He's not a leftist at all in reality. But because, you know, there really isn't any pushback, this is what we're faced with. And a union is basically an organization that is supposed to represent the working class. And we're supposed to be in solidarity with other working class individuals, other working class organizations. We should be in solidarity with the Amazon people. We should be supporting wholeheartedly a $15 minimum wage. We should be in support of, you know, legislation that forgives or college debt or makes it easier for people to afford education. We should be in support of legislation for healthcare, Medicare for all, and things of this nature. The thing, what we led off with this discussion with, as far as, you know, Breonna Taylor and police reform and, you know, ending, you know, the what's going on with people who are getting killed by police and there's no accountability. There's no jail time for these officers. There's no repercussions for people losing their lives, citizens who should be afforded full rights losing their lives. All of these things are things that unions should be in the forefront of. And we need to press our union and do everything that we can to change that and to get to the point where we're back doing that. Otherwise, like I said before, the analogy I used, it's like a body being affected by a slow moving disease. And it's going to kill us, and it's going to put us back to a form of capitalism that you would see in a Dickens novel. And we're headed that way.
Anthony, sorry to interrupt. It's even worse than that. It's paving the way for fascism, and we all saw that. I mean, what it is now is not what it will be if we don't stop it. But I just want to wrap up here with an appeal. If you're a transit worker and you know a competent, bloodthirsty lawyer, we want to know about it. If you're a politician who we've engaged in united fronts with to help get elected to office, Jabari Brisport, Faris Ufran Forrest, Zoran Mamdani, or anyone else that we've engaged in the united front work with, trying to build this public sector workers coalition. Anybody who knows of a good lawyer that can be trusted to actually take this where it needs to go, we want to hear from you. We're calling in all of the favors that we have, and unfortunately, this is the cards that we're left to play because the union leadership cannot be trusted to do it. And we're deathly serious about this. We will sue them, and we will defeat them, and we will beat them. And it's important that we got to have victories. We have to have victories now. It can't wait till the next election. And by the way, everybody that's running for office, I don't ever want to hear from you again if I don't hear from you about this situation here. Okay? If you're not willing to put your chips on the table and provide all the resources possible to defeat the MTA and stop these job cuts, then it's very hard to believe that you're going to lead the whole goddamn union or that you're going to provide any kind of solutions. So time to call everybody's bluff. And if you know these people, members, we want you to call them and find out what they're going to do. Anybody else want to speak before we go?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Umberto.
One last word, circle back to Breonna Taylor. And I mean the whole year dealing with the police force and more specifically defunding the police, which is something that John Samuelson was saying that cost the Dems a lot of elections, including Max Rose of Staten Island. But anyway, here's the problem was, that's an issue that we blamed a lot of the rise in crime on defunding the police and on bail reform, which actually was not the case. So it's important we understand that these police forces get funded in the billions of dollars. NYPD, they got 10 billion. I think they got cut like half a billion, a quarter of a billion they lost, they got cut.
Well, it was 6 billion, Roberto. It was 6 billion, and they cut it 1 billion, and the same money going to the same cops as school police officers. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's not really a cut, but it's just to say that we always say, well, we need more social workers, we need more mental health workers, we need housing for people, and these things are attainable. The money that we give out to militarize the police is insane, and this money can go into better resources and safety nets for our people, and people shouldn't be suffering. People shouldn't be living on the trains. So before we go, when you say defund the police, and a lot of us say abolish the police. That's a whole different topic for another day. We could talk about that. But when we say defund, we're talking about billions of dollars that never get seen in these other places, like we're saying mental health, public health. Housing, these things they might get a couple million. They're not going to get billions of dollars like these police forces are getting. So until we see this amount of money going towards these resources, we're never going to see change. So we're going to say, well, these things are a failure. These outreach workers are a failure. They're not getting the money that these police forces are getting. So of course they're not going to win. It's an uphill battle. So to circle back to Breonna Taylor and like I said, we need resources to go to these important things, and we don't need to call the police with a mental health issue or whatever the case may be. The police shouldn't be the last resort to call.
Yeah. Jonathan, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Umberto said. The message from the union should be something that I've been saying on social media a lot. The police should be defunded the way transit has been defunded for the past 3 decades.
Right. Exactly.
And education too, and the schools.
Yeah.
The way the teachers been getting defunded,
Our union, Local 100, should point out how they've been defunding public transit. The MTA, New York City Transit, but we've been getting less funding from the state and the city since the Cuomo Senior administration.
Right. Well, also, I think that see, you notice how Jonathan brings that up. It's such an obvious point, but it will never, ever, under any circumstances, ever be raised by this boss-loving, white-skin privileged, sellout union leadership. They will never raise that because they're terrified of pissing off people even more conservative and privileged and racist than they
Pat
are.
Lynch. Yeah.
Pat Lynch. That's what they're worried about. Oh, by the way, that little press conference event that they had handing out food at the Union Hall for a bunch of fat-ass bureaucrats that the PBA held, what did that do for us? What is this doing for us? And because they get what they get, that's why we don't have what we need. That's exactly why. It's a scarce resources. It's a war of all against all, and the bosses love that. They love it. That's why the cops are their best tool, because whether they fund them and militarize them, whether they're not doing what they need to do to actually make communities safe, or whether they use as a bat to crack us over the head when we fight back, either way, it works for them. They are their tool. They own them, and we can't expect any kind of change if we're not willing to take that on. So anyway, I think we're about almost at 2 hours. We got to wrap up.
Yeah.
I did not expect it to be this long, but we had a lot to cover. It's been a while since we did a live stream. So please continue in the comments. Please get in touch with us. And anybody we've done joint work with, we expect to hear from you. We're not. So we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
One more point.
Yeah, go ahead, Umberto.
Fuck Pepe Le Pew. He's a fucking rapist.
Wait a second. You're going to bring up Pepe Le Pew and not talk about that racist scumbag Dr. Seuss? No. I don't know. I don't understand. Like, why is everybody in their feelings about canceling racists who made caricatures of Japanese Americans to justify their internment in concentration camps on the west coast of the United States? Are we fucking serious?
Pepe Le Pew?
with Pepe Le Pew, you know what's interesting about that is that the scene that was cut from the movie, was actually one where Pepe Le Pew gets his comeuppance about that. He tries to come onto a woman, she slaps him and pours a drink in his face, and he's talking to LeBron James in that scene, that they didn't even animate him in it, but this was what the scene was supposed to be, and LeBron James tells him that he can't just go touching women without their consent. And then Pepe Le Pew says that the cat, that he's always chasing, has a restraining order against him now. So
you know what? But you know what? Nobody ever talks about the cat. They always talk about, poor Pepe Le Pew, rest in peace. Yeah. Exactly. But they don't talk about the woman. She's been getting fucking harassed. She's been getting harassed and molested all these years, man. Yeah.
The funniest thing is your coworkers will say, "Well, the cat gets away." Do you?
They'll say that because he stinks. Not because he stinks. He's kissing her. Yeah.
There's a lot you could go into that, and read about it, and there's a lot of opinions that could go into this. But most of the people who are bringing the charge against this, leading the charge against this, LeBron James is in that scene. LeBron James is an athlete in the NBA, a basketball player. He's done so much for the community, giving back. He has a school. He sponsors kids for scholarships, all this other stuff. And he was in the forefront of leading the NBA to be more socially conscious and protesting Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, all this other stuff. But they brought cancel culture to LeBron James, and they're gleefully celebrating that the NBA All-Star ratings were at a record low this past weekend. So, I mean, it's like, why who gives a crap about a cartoon French skunk, when you and nobody's talking about LeBron James and why are you canceling him? Why are you on the side of the people who want to cancel LeBron James? Exactly. You want and you know what kills me is all of these conservatives, they talk about how Christian they are and all of this or whatever. What's more Christian than giving to the poor like what LeBron has done?
Right, exactly.
What's more Christian than that? I don't get it.
But the other thing is, Anthony, look, you have to see who is putting out the propaganda. Just like Tony, do a fucking Google search, you moron. Go look up the Manhattan Institute and find out they're fucking racist and union busters. How stupid could you be? Well, the same thing with our members who are back in this backlash against cancel culture and are crying about Pepe Le Pew. QAnon is pushing this. Fascists are pushing this. Wake up. Jonathan, go ahead.
Well, certainly, even if Tony Utano thinks that the Manhattan Institute is just a bunch of guys from Manhattan, certainly somebody like Tony Utano has picked up the New York Post once or twice in his life.
Read Nicole,
Yeah.
And seen and must know who Nicole Galinas is. And
you gotta take it to task. Yeah, man. You gotta take it to task.
Right.
But anyway, guys. Sorry about
before
that.
we go, since you brought it up, Umberto, and John mentioned Dr. Seuss, right?
Yeah.
It was 6 books that were canceled.
From his estate.
From Dr. Seuss people. Dr. Seuss, the company that stayed. Yeah, that were never read. I think one I did read.
Never heard of them.
But or even read to my kids, but the books were canceled because of their racist content. From what I've read, one of them depicted Asians, with white people on their back and referred to them as helpers or whatever. Grossly racist stuff.
Anti-Muslim stuff too.
Yeah, from like 60, 70 years ago or whatever. And it's also worth noting that the Dr. Seuss was an anti-Semite and a racist. A lot of it wasn't included into his children's books, but he was. He as a political cartoonist, he was anti-Semitic and a racist. But he wrote some good stuff. One of them was The Lorax, which was an environmental book, a book that tried to teach kids about the environment.
Right. And
back in 2012, the same people now who were screaming about Pepe Le Pew were screaming about they wanted to cancel Dr. Seuss. They wanted to cancel the freaking the Dr. Seuss book, The Lorax, because it was it was about the environment.
No, you know what?
So it's like they're using this
secret communist then. He was a secret communist then. Now he's
exactly.
Now he's all looked at. Jonathan, I see your hand up. We gotta wrap this up.
We gotta wrap this up, man. I was just saying, fuck Pepe Le Pew, man.
It's Umberto's fault.
I think we're all old enough to remember the right-wing outrage against Teletubbies and Heather Bobby. Yeah.
Yeah. What about canceling the Dixie Chicks? Are they going to uncancel them now?
There's something that right-wing conspiracy theorists, something they have this fetish with children that they have. It's always something. The conspiracy theories always involve pedophilia. Or what about children? You're killing children. Oh, the children. Oh, the babies, the children.
They're snitching on themselves. They're snitching on themselves. I think they've got a lot of secrets. But But in any case, I think they should keep the secrets for their televangelist churches and shit.
Yeah.
Say, fuck off my TV. Anyway, we gotta go. Dabba dabba dabba. That's all, folks, guys. See you later.
Alrighty, guys.
Okay. Be safe, everyone. Have a good night.
Alrighty. Good night, John.
Good night.